Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our presidential address in the POD online conference. We're very excited today to have POD Network President Carol Hurney with us, especially because she is not just doing one presidential address this year, she's doing two, the first one here with our online attendees. So we are very glad to have her with us today, and I will turn it over to her to talk with us.
Thank you, Teresa, and welcome everyone. I'm so happy to be here and excited to participate in the online conference with you all. I've seen many of you in some of the sessions that I've been attending and look forward to seeing you in a few more. Before we get started, I just would like to welcome you again to this and stop for a moment of silence in reference to the shootings that took place at the University of Virginia and on the University of Idaho campus. And so we'll pause for a couple of minutes and send our thoughts to the people that are managing these tragedies. Right, thank you. I'd also like to take a moment to stand with the Duwamish tribe. The POD Network acknowledges that I'm currently here in Seattle with the conference team. We are on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present, and we honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. I've also included on my slide an excerpt from the Duwamish tribe's website, noting that they believe that this kind of acknowledgement is not a new practice developed by colonial institutions, that these land acknowledgements are a traditional custom back for centuries. For non-Indigenous communities, land acknowledgement is a powerful way of showing respect and honoring the Indigenous people of the land. I also provide a link to their website, so you, when you have a moment, can learn a little bit more about the Duwamish tribe. I also want to acknowledge that we need to do more than acknowledge the tribes of the nations that are in the cities that we conference. And so I'm proud to tell you that we will be working with the board of directors at the upcoming core meeting to develop a authentic, sustainable process by which we develop relationships with the First Nations in the conference cities that we attend. And so I look forward to being able to tell you more about how that will unfold in the coming years. There are a lot of people that makes a conference like this possible. And so I want to make sure that I acknowledge this village that is assembled around me and is assembled on Zoom right now. The conference team, both the online and the in-person conference team, there are loads of volunteers and staff members that we hire for this purpose. We are also happy to have a number of conference buddies that are working both in person and in the online format. But most importantly, we are so happy to have you in the capacities that you're serving in this conference, whether you were a reviewer for session proposals, whether you're a session presenter or an attendee, all of us together make this possible. I want to just also recognize a few other rock stars that I feel are an important part of the ways that POD functions. So it is worth noting that we pulled together a really wonderful group of people to help us develop a COVID working policy, a COVID policy for the Seattle conference. And I'd like to give a special cheer to President-elect Stacey Grouders for leading that up. There are a variety of POD committees and special interest groups that not only do a lot of great things during the conference, but also year round. And I want to acknowledge the work that they do. The other members of the executive team, which includes the past president, the president-elect, well as the chair of the finance committee and our executive director, Holg Holmgren, and our administrative assistant, Gay Webb. And then finally, in terms of the POD groups, we would like to acknowledge the core committee, which will be meeting for their annual business meeting starting tomorrow. A couple of groups that have been working with POD Network during this past year are Think Again Training and Consulting. This is a group that we have hired to help us become a more multicultural organization. And to that end, we compiled a change advisory team composed of POD members with varying experience with the POD network to work with the Think Again Training and Consulting team and other members of the POD community to think, rethink, examine, re-examine the ways that we do pretty much everything. We will be giving an update, and by we, I mean my presidential counterparts, Fran Glazer and Stacey Friday morning, that we'll be live streaming for both the online participants, and we'll be having it here in Seattle for the in-person participants. Participants in both venues will be able to ask questions and engage with us in this session. So we look forward to seeing you there. I want to also shout out the inclusivity measures that we've integrated into this online conference, including a unique session notes documents for each session, transcription provided for all sessions. We sent in advance to the presenters accessible slide guidance that I am following, by the way. I got alt text on of my slides and a number of notes that will appear when you see the slide version that I will send out after the conference. We set up some affinity groups that we also have had since the Pittsburgh conference. We started our first set of affinity groups there. And then I agreed to have the, it isn't hard, they didn't have to twist my arm, to record the presidential address so that folks that are unable to attend during this time block or the in-person time block here in Seattle will be able to benefit from the conversations that we have here today. So the topic of my address is something that has been, I've been thinking about for a little while in terms of sort of my own work. I've called it Recalibrating Your Educational Development Compass. Your educational development compasses. I imagine that we all have a unique compass, and so together we have a variety of compasses that guide our work. Before I enter fully into this topic, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about my own experience in the POD network, because it is certainly a part of my compass and the ways that I navigate the work that I do. So in addition to being POD president, I am the Associate Provost of Faculty Development and Diversity and the founding Center for Teaching and Learning at Colby College. I came to Colby by way of James Madison University, where I was the executive director of the Center for Faculty Innovation and a professor of biology. I have been coming to POD for a long time. I think my first POD was Denver in 2003, where I knew no one. I'm not so sure. I wonder if I came back the next year, I probably met a few more people, but it's sort of an evolutionary process for me understanding the role that I was starting to inhabit and the work that I was starting to do. But I slowly began to realize that POD was a place for me. And so I welcome all of you who are sitting in Zoom rooms right now, or who will be sitting in an in-person version of this talk and first time at POD. Yeah, you can be the president of POD one day. It can happen. So let's think a bit about where we're going collectively, individually, in our different roles. And so imagine that you're holding a compass and you're trying to guide yourself around the state of Maine, and you come across this picture that I really love. I find it a lot when I'm out biking in the neighborhoods that I live in. And so in Maine, we have a number of cities that are named after countries, and kind of signpost shows up every once in a while if you're driving around the back roads. I like this image because it's sort of off-putting a bit, right? It's like, well, where am I going? And so I think it is a reasonable question to think about, whether you're new in your career or you've been doing it as many years as I have. What I'm doing, where am I going? And so I have a couple of insights to the answers to that question, but I suspect the true answers to that question is sort of the combined effort of both of our conferences together that help us understand where we're going. So for me, I think a lot about impact, and I'm going to thank my colleague Michael Palmer for this image that he constructed for a project that I'm working with him and Mary Wright and my senior associate director at Colby, Jordan Troisi, and another colleague of ours at JMU, Lori Hostetler. So what this does really well for me, it reminds me of all the things I'm trying to accomplish with a program, a consultation, any sort of thing that I'm trying to launch from the center. I certainly want instructors to be satisfied, but, sort of leaning into these other impacts. I want to change the ways that enhance the ways. I want to challenge the ways that they believe about their work and their teaching. I want them to, in ways that are really authentic to what they're trying to accomplish in the classroom. I want them to rethink their practices. I also want students to change their perceptions of teaching and learning. And I would like for it to happen one day where I have to go into the president's office at Colby and be like, all the students in this class A's, and that's a good thing. They deserve these A's. They work to the highest achievement level. And so I think I want to be that impact. And then certainly there are aspects of institutional culture that all of us are trying to impact, whether it be the use of student evaluations of teaching, which, are obviously a contentious issue. If these impacts don't pull at you, all you need to do is spend a time for a little bit looking through some of the the news headlines on the Chronicle of Higher Education. If these titles don't grab you and remind you what you're trying to do, I guess I'll have to just look for another set of 4 or 5 of them. What does it mean when students can't pass your course? The return of college as the common good, why faculty of color are leaving academe, and will artificial intelligence kill writing, which is actually something we're dealing with on our campus right now. So there are a lot of reasons why we do our work and a lot of places we're trying to go, and something navigates us through this very complex landscape. And I don't know if it's an actual physical compass, but I sort of imagine that there's a compass. There's something that leads us in certain directions and steers us away from others. And so maybe it's because I'm a scientist, I start to realize that whatever compass we have is something that you need to question, right? So you're like, well, is that north? Is it really north? How do I know it's north? And is that direction I need to go? Should I go east first to get there? Is there a better route that I need to take? Is the shortest way always the best? So for part of my experience doing educational development, but also as a biologist, I've sort of been growing my understanding of this concept of calibration. And so for me, calibration means a very particular thing. And I think it, of course, is influenced by the fact that I'm a scientist. And so I'm going to show a science picture. And I hope it's not off-putting for you non-scientists, but I think it'll make a good point. So this is what I think of when I think of calibration. So the molecular biology that I did as a graduate student, in fact, I often tell people that my expertise is pipetting small amounts of liquid into tiny little tubes, right? Tubes that we're actually a lot more used to seeing because of COVID and going and get COVID tested. But often you might want to wonder, if you're trying to pipette a microliter of something into a tube, how do you actually know it's a microliter? And if, like I was, trying to graduate with my doctorate in biology, my success as a graduate student depended on how much small amount of volume was being released from my pipetter, then I needed to make sure that I trusted this particular tool. So for me, it was about accuracy. It was also about sort of standardization. So how do I know that the pipette is releasing the amount of liquid I want? Well, really the best way to know is to weigh out the liquid. A microliter of water weighs a certain, and so then I got to trust the scale that I'm using to weigh out the water. And then, well, then how do I trust the scale that I use to weigh out the water? Well, I go and I purchase standardized weight units. So, it's not even a simple process where I can just look at the pipette, do something with it in some sort of way, and make sure that it's, by looking at it, oh yeah, that's definitely a microliter. It's also an opportunity, I think, for some pieces of equipment or some opportunities, or, sort of the way that we might think about this term, to have a reset. So yes, I know this is a very science-oriented way of thinking about the word calibration. So I asked a few other people, mostly my spouse, who is a non-scientist, and I asked her, what do you think calibration means? And she's like, well, something got disrupted, and, so you need to know how to get it back. And so you have to figure out what to trust. And so for me, those two words really pulled it out of this sort of very weirdo, geeky, pipetting liquid science modality into something that I feel like we can spend a fair amount of time here talking about during this talk. So first, I just want to talk about disruptions, and before I talk about it in the context of development, I will tell you that just using my pipetter will disrupt it over time. So just by doing some of our work, we might actually be becoming just sort of too used to it. And because of that, we just might need to be calibrated again. And so I don't even have to drive over this thing with a car or drop it on the ground, which of course I'm and many times. The pipetter is just actually going to need to be calibrated over time. And again, like I said, I have to have some way of trusting the calibration process so I can get back to a pipetter that's actually doing what I want. So there have been disruptions in our lives over the past few years, over the past lifetime that we have been on this planet. And some of these disruptions, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that all of our disruptions are different. All of our disruptions bring us maybe different levels of pain, and are ones that we often have no control over. And so I'd like for you to pause just for a minute to think about some of the things that have really been the disruptions that impacted your work the most over the past year. So just jot down a couple of ideas. What are the 2 or 3 that you feel have really taken your educational development compass and kind of oh, I don't know anymore which way I'm going? All right. Okay, so now we have our disruptions, and now we need to find something we trust that's going to bring us back to a place where we can look at our compass wherever it is, and whether it's a tattoo on our arm, whether it's a sundial on the floor, whether it's some other kind of image of a compass that you find compelling, and we need to figure out how to get back on track. So what I'm going to do during the next few slides is I'm going to go through 4 things that I use as my calibrators for my work. And then I'm going to give you opportunities to think about the ways that these might influence your calibration process. And I'm going to be using a tool called Mentor. So if you've never used it before, you can go to mentimeter.com, and in a few minutes, I'll be giving you a numeric code that you can use to put your responses in as an anonymous participant in this online session. I am going to look for themes and ideas that emerge out of your responses, because I want to bring some of your ideas into the in-person address that I'll be giving here in Seattle. As much as I can, I want you to be there with me. So you will have my back in a lot of different ways, but this will be one of them. So for me, I know it's going to sound cliche, but remember I was, sort of newbie back in the early thousands, educational developer. I don't think I really even knew what that meant, but I was coming to these conferences and I found that the one thing that I would always do every year when it was conference time was look at the conference session list. Just looking at the list, taking a step back, not thinking about which ones you want to go to, but just looking at them from what are people doing? What are people presenting? What are some of the themes? What are the things that you're just like, wow, I never even thought that was part of my world? Or, oh, I have been doing that and I want to check and make sure that what I'm, the way that I'm approaching it is valid, is aligned with the ways that other people are thinking about it, are places where I can learn more. So if you haven't had a chance to just read through all the conference sessions that are being offered, and I do think they can see the in-person ones, even if they're not in the in-person. So you can even look at the in-person list just to see like what's going on over there. Just doing that gives you a couple of things, ideas of the themes that are emerging in our field, and a bunch of names of people that you can email. Because if other people haven't told you this, I will tell you it right now. You can email me whenever you want. And I'm pretty sure that would be the answer that every other person at the conference would say, like, yeah, sure, whatever you need, we're here, we want to help. So you get a little bit of both by just looking at the list of conferences. The POD network is now sort of really accumulating a series of resources that are just quite fabulous, from the POD Speaks series of papers to some occasional papers, such as the one about defining what matters. How do we evaluate our work? And then a slew of new programs like scholarly reads, where you get to hear authors of particular papers talking about their work. So there's a resource section on the website. Prior to us having a lot of resources on the website, I think there's just always been the listserv, the Google group. I mean, you just want anything in there, you're going to get it in 5 seconds. And you don't really have to even be a member to access that resource. And then finally, I feel like the POD network helps me calibrate my compass, because it helps me see the leading edges. It helps me go into like uncharted forests. It helps me find things that I didn't even know were there. And so there's a series of podcasts that are now emerging, some pod lives that are pushing at things that I think really, from my perspective, and again, your read on this might be different. What might be your resource is my leading edge, and what my leading edge is might be your resource. And then there's, of course, a variety of other podcasts that feature pod members in their work, such as teaching and higher ed. So the POD network in these ways helps me and my compass get calibrated every year. So I'd like you to take a moment and tell me the ways that you believe, even if you're new, maybe you've started to realize the ways that the POD network keeps your compass calibrated. So you can go to Mentimeter and you can type in this code. And if you want to see the results, you can type in the URL that's at the bottom of this slide. And I'm just thankful that you would consider contributing. So this is an invitation. Share what you can, and you can opt out. So I'm going to slide over and take a peek at what might be going on over there. So how does the POD network keep your compass calibrated? All right, so keep sharing. It is there for you to keep adding to. So I appreciate those of you that are providing some ideas. The next element that I use, that I trust, that I use for calibrating my compass is the scholarship of teaching and learning and of educational development. And certainly, the key journals in this area are To Improve the Academy, which is POD's journal, Thriving in Academe, which is a collaborative effort between POD and NEA, and then the IJAD, the International Journal of Academic Development, which is offered by ICED, the International Council on Educational Developers. Again, you read the table of contents of these and you get a sense of where we are as an emerging field and a growing field, a maturing field. So these places are these are the kind of journals that I feel like I really wish that I still had in journal format. And I appreciate that we're in a lot of open source journaling, but every once in a while you just want to sit down and read a book. And if you're going to read a journal as a book, you want to read one of these as a book. The other place that I go to, which is not really that surprising, is LSE, which is the premier scholarship of teaching and learning journal in the biological sciences. And there's just a range of really wonderful peer-reviewed papers here that really challenge the ways that not just STEM education works, but just sort of broadly the way that education is evolving and the way teaching is impacting students. And of course, I'm just going to shout out to some of my favorite authors, such as Brian Dewsbury and Cynthia Brahm, are putting together some really amazing work around inclusive teaching. There's often also a person that you just got to keep track of in the literature. And that person for me, one of those people for me is Randy Bass. So I track his work through a variety of different formats. So once you find that there's a researcher that's sort of pushing at the edges that you're interested in, then you've got a hook into the educational development literature. So the second area of trust for me is the scholarship of teaching and educational development. And I'm going to now welcome, can't wait, almost forgot this. My kind of go-to book, the book that I feel like I got to read over and over and over again, this is one of that's on the list of books that I just keep going back to. So Alicia Chavez and Susan Longerbeam, book on teaching across cultural strengths is that book for me. It's that book where I feel like it always blossoms some new area of thinking for me. And it helps me think, maybe I need to take the longer route to get to some professors and think and change their thinking, or encourage them to recraft the way that they're working with their students. So what are the ways that literature in teaching and learning and educational development helps keep your compass calibrated? Again, it's the same Mentimeter. You should be able to just slide to the next question in the deck. And I'd love for you to think a bit about this. Who are the people out there that you read? Where is it you go for your ideas? Let's see what we got. Is it not activated? Maybe I need to activate it. Are they saying anything, chat? Yes, all right. Helps to drive the future. Yes, the West Virginia University Press Series. Fantabulous. I think I got one of their books in my bag. Inclusive teaching. Nice. This is great. Right. More ways to calibrate our compasses. Pedagogy of the oppressed. Certainly our source for evidence-based strategies. I love that. The literature helps you feel optimistic. Wonderful, wonderful. All right, so area number 3 that helps me to calibrate my compass are people. And so this is a picture of a building that I spent a week in this past summer. It's a building that Colby College owns on an island off the coast of Maine called Allen Island. And we brought 15 faculty there for a course design experience. And this is when I realized that the direct experience that I'm able to have with faculty about their work is one of the best compasses that I'll ever have. Best ways to calibrate my compass. So it's that interaction where they're revealing some of their dreams and hopes about their teaching. It is also where they bring ideas about their students. It's where I feel like, there's just a sense of kind of groundedness that I think I get in no other way. And so while I did take this role to be an associate provost, I am very thankful that my CTL team still lets me be a part of these programs on a regular basis. So the faculty are part of my people calibration of my compass, in addition to my teams. So I think a lot of us get a lot of really wonderful ideas with the people that we work with every day. And so I'm just going to shout out to my Center for Teaching and Learning folks at Colby, Kathy and Jordan and Kevin Murray and Abby Labrash and Sasha, who's been working with us lately. All of you keep me on the right path. Certainly, there are loads of people at POD that I can talk about, and I hope that you start to meet some of these people that can be your compass calibrators. And so, but I think most importantly for me, it's the faculty that I get to work with. We've recently started a new program where we're working with pedagogical partners, undergraduates that are pedagogical partners, and they are also lickety split, man. They are the first ones that'll just tell us exactly what's going on in a classroom in ways that I think are really formative and make the dial on your just go on all kinds of directions in ways that I'm just like, okay, like, all right, how do we move forward? So I think being on the ground level with the people that we're working with, for me, is one of the most powerful compasses. How about for you? Who are the people that help keep your compass calibrated? And feel free to name names if that. I want to shout out to some folks, mentors you may have. Is this like the old Twitter network, like 3 weeks ago? Yeah, probably. Oh, yay. Look at this. People are getting the kudos. Oh, Teresa. Peter Felton, yeah. Scholarship committee. Maybe it's your conference buddy. All right. Thank you again for sharing. All right, so I'm going to end. How am I doing here? Good. I'm going to end with this last area, which I have to say it took me a long time to kind of come around to think about the best way to talk about it. Because I think that you yourself are part of the way that you calibrate your compass. And I think in part that's because we, as educational developers in this particular age, are challenging ourselves to do some kind of internal work that we're also hoping that we can encourage the members of our community to do with us, that it's rethink all kinds of things that relate to sort of racism, oppression, colonization, sort of all of the social unrest, the issues that are coming out of COVID that are still present in our classrooms. So all of this happens because we have to do a kind of a really additional type of work that really wasn't part of my radar 10, 15 years ago. And so for me, part of that journey comes from, now remember, my expertise is pipetting small amounts of liquids into tiny little tubes. My window into this came a few years ago when I decided to make myself vulnerable by taking a poetry class. And in this poetry class, we read this book, Why Poetry, by Matthew Zapruto. And my poetry teacher, who I can't believe I didn't bring the buttons. She gave us little buttons this poet in practice, but so it should be on my name tag. She first of all opened up the world of poetry to me. It was closed. I had no idea how to read poetry. I didn't really know what to do with poetry. And it was just sort of like, it seemed like a good idea to read about, but I never really knew what to do. And so what Arisa White, my poetry guru, taught me was that poetry, one way to get into poetry is to realize that you have some unspoken truths. There are things that you haven't told yourself about you, about the world, about the way you navigate the world. And she used all kinds of ways to get us to delve deeply into imagery and words and just sort of ideas that we had and trying to think about the best words. And we would go to the museum and she would ask us all these crazy questions about the different, pieces of art that were in the museum. So I spent almost the whole weekend staring up at a bunch of pictures of, folks that were in the Black Panthers or a few of the indigenous artists that we have on display at the Colby Museum. I'm thinking about what are some of my unspoken truths? And so one of the pieces of poetry that I have worked on since taking this class is one where I realized I had a lot of unspoken truths about my experience with learning and how that I may not be forceful enough in what I'm trying to accomplish with inclusive learning initiatives with my faculty. So I came up with a piece that is called If These Walls Could Learn. And I hope that you will entertain me a bit of space because I'm going to read this poem to you. This is the first time I've read it out loud to anyone except for my spouse. If These Walls Could Learn by Carol Hurney. Learning becomes more than checked expectations, completed deadlines, climbed bars. The watch becomes the rhythm it tracks, never fulfilled, filled with everything. Pages and pages laid on top of plaid with silky words. No note cards no, for a different wall. Hello, I'm here to help. Help is all around. Open wide. Swallow the syllabus swallows. You're not helping me. You're pushing me to the edge of myself. Open the drawer to this corner. If the walls could talk, would they plagiarize? Walls, play with your mind. Whose mind has been here? Mind your heroes. They cast shadows. Are you there? There was a person on my left and on my right. Did you take them from the chemistry and the calculus of risks? Risks with chemistry often exhale piles of letters, not from the real alphabet. The learned five have their own order, neatly piled. The limping three-legged coffee table tracks the A's and B's. C's and D's slide along like empty hangers. Inhaling F's, slowly exhale secrets. Knowledge that is not learning escapes from the syllabus and runs towards the television. Learning is knowledge that stays put. It's on the syllabus, in order, as expected. My father paid me for bringing home letters. A's were worth $3, B's $2. C's and D's were acknowledged but not rewarded. My mother asked for no letters, just phone calls. Learning comes naturally to some, like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. They learned which bowls to eat from and which bed was theirs for slumber. Getting into the wrong bed or eating from the wrong bowl means swallowing spoonfuls of F's and no dollars. There are no more dollars for learning. Instead, you must annotate each note in the higher education orchestra. Explaining what you know puts you in a cage where you sing about Polly and her crackers. You must sing the song. The song you must sing is their song. Sing the song. Yeah, it's time to move again. Find new walls to help you. Hello, wall. What do you know about neurons and Shakespeare? Learning means I can tell the walls what they already know about transmitting tragedies. How do I know that I'm learning? Will the test double in size like bread proofing in my head? My skin has seen as much as this wall. It learns about the sun and mutations every day. Mutations leave a metallic taste on my body, but the skin can't say nothing, skin. The fly on each wall walks up the painted flowers and leaves filled with ants carrying all of the learning in their brains they need to survive. The ants know before they're born their role. The knowing ants the queen, she lays eggs. Learning extends to the edge of each leaf, but the insects never need more. Content with life. Smoke fills my head. You push me near the edge. You say I'm not content with life on the leaf. You must jump. I ask you how far, and you tell me. I'll build a ladder with note cars that sways. I jump, you are there when I arrive. You tell me, jump again. I exhale smoke in your face. I jump away, stretch, reach. I crawl under the bed, turn on the ceiling fan that lifts me into the bathroom like a helicopter. These are new walls, my walls. I become a stained glass window for my new wall. I shed cards and syllabi. I look up towards the sun. My walls are ready for the light, for my colors, not yours. My brain sees many new leaves, wants to tell the fly from the painted flowers to paint flowers on the walls, on the queen, on everything. Ants marching know how. Ants have know-how. Ants know how to march. Lean into the wall wearing your superhero blanket. Conquer expectations, triumph deadlines, and reach the highest bar. Jump! Ignore the walls. They don't know. Swallow the tea. Taste the metal. Dismantle every ray of light. Let every neuron morph. Morph your neurons to hook into two walls. Build squares with no letters. Split atoms, spread ashes, vanish. Walk into your own corner. Hang your hat or breath as you inhale your walls. So, what's in you? What walls are you pushing against? To create your compass. This is your last contribution. What's your fight? What are you pushing? Yes. We need some music here. Mm. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, when you're calibrating your educational development compasses, reflect on the ways that this community, the POD network, our extension of our work, the scholarship of teaching and learning and educational development, the people that maybe are in these Zoom rooms right next to you or sitting in this room with me right now, as well as sort of maybe people who have impacted you long ago, or are right in front of your face. How are all of them, plus your inner fire that you are pushing against the different elements of higher education that really inhibit us from achieving what we're trying to achieve, and taking out our compasses and going in the direction that we want to go. This is the work that we do every day, but it just seems to be something to hold up in a unique and kind of more prominent way when we're here together as a community. And I'm so glad that I was here with you today. And I do want to end with just one more comment about how this is exactly what we're doing within the POD organization. And again, I'd like to remind you of our session on Friday, where you'll hear about some of the work that we're doing to recalibrate our POD network compass so that we can become a more multicultural organization where we help every member of this community thrive. Thank you so much for your time, for your work, and for being a part of this community.
I think one of the things, I'm Kristen English, the other co-chair. I think one of the things that we often don't get a chance to do is hear one another. So I invite everybody to unmute themselves and give Carol a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And in just a few minutes, we're going to open up our beverage hour, where we'll discuss the various themes from Carol's address. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to discussing this further. And happy conferencing.
Thank you.